They say the most dangerous wolf is not the strongest or the fastest, but the one with nothing left to lose. That's what I became the day I invoked the right of fangs against the Alpha King. A trial no one had dared attempt in 300 years. The morning mist clung to the northern peaks like a burial shroud, and Kaya Thornweaver stood at the edge of the execution platform, counting the seconds until her death. Below, the assembled pack of the Ironwood territory waited in savage silence, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. They had come to watch the half-breed die. Kaya Thornweaver, the executioner's voice, boomed across the mountain clearing. You stand accused of the murder of Beta Commander Wraith. The penalty is death by silver blade. She didn't flinch. After 23 years of being called an abomination born of a wolf father and a human mother, unable to fully shift, trapped between two worlds, she had learned that showing fear only fed their hatred. Her mixed blood made her slower than pure wolves, weaker in their eyes, useful only for the menial work they deemed beneath them. The Beta Commander had discovered that her wolf side, diluted as it was, gave her something else entirely: the ability to see through pack bonds, to read the invisible threads that connected wolves to their alpha. He tried to force her to use this sight to spy on Alpha King Theron, to help him stage a challenge for the throne. When she refused, he'd attacked her. The silver knife that killed him had been his own, turned against him in her desperate defense. But who would believe a half-breed over a dead Beta's reputation? Does the condemned have any last words? The executioner asked, raising the ceremonial blade that would separate her head from her shoulders. Kaya lifted her chin, her mother's hazel eyes meeting the cold gaze of Alpha King Theron, where he sat on his throne of black stone. He was magnificent and terrible. They said undefeated in battle, merciless in judgment. His wolf so powerful that others couldn't meet his eyes without submitting. For 3 years, he had ruled the 5 unified territories with absolute authority, since he'd killed the previous Alpha King and taken his crown. She had nothing to lose anymore. Her mother was dead, killed by the same Beta who now lay in the ground. Her father had disowned her at birth. She had no pack, no allies, no future. But she had knowledge, one piece of ancient law that everyone had forgotten. I invoke the right of fangs, Kaya declared, her voice cutting through the mountain air like a blade. I challenge Alpha King Theron for the crime of unjust rule. The clearing erupted in gasps and snarls. Wolves shifted partially in shock, fur rippling across human skin. The executioner's blade wavered, his eyes darting to his king. Theron rose from his throne, slowly, deliberately, his presence washing over the assembly like a physical force. When he spoke, his voice was winter-given sound. The right of fangs hasn't been invoked in 3 centuries, half-breed. You dare use sacred law to avoid your execution? I use sacred law. As it was written, Kaya replied, forcing her voice to remain steady, even as his power pressed against her mixed blood like a vice. Any wolf, regardless of rank or birth, may challenge the Alpha King if they can prove his judgment brings harm to the pack. The accused has the right to trial by combat, not against you, but against your 3 chosen champions. If I survive all 3, the moon goddess herself will judge between us. The silence that followed stretched hot as a bowstring. She could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes, some shocked, some disgusted, most simply disbelieving. A half-breed invoking sacred law was like a sparrow challenging an eagle to own the sky. Alpha King Theron descended from his throne with predatory grace, each step deliberate and measured. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, nearly 7 feet of controlled power, with midnight black hair and eyes the color of winter storms. His wolf's presence radiated from him in waves, making even the strongest pack members bow their heads in submission. But Kaya couldn't fully submit. It was the curse of her mixed blood. Her human half prevented complete surrender to an alpha's will, while her wolf half made her crave pack bonds she could never truly have. She stood caught between worlds, neither fully human nor properly wolf, forever watching from the margins of both societies. You speak of sacred law, Theron said, circling her slowly. Yet you blaspheme with your very existence. Your father broke our most fundamental commandment when he mated with a human woman. You are living proof of his crime. My father's sins are not mine, Kaya replied, though her voice trembled. The law recognizes no difference between full blood and half-blood when it comes to the right of fangs. Or have you forgotten the old words, Your Majesty? A low growl rumbled from his chest. I forget nothing, half-breed, but you forget that to invoke the right, you must first prove you have a legitimate grievance. What harm have I supposedly brought to this pact? Kaya reached into her torn prisoner's tunic and pulled out folded parchments, the one thing the guards hadn't bothered to take from a condemned half-breed. The death certificates of 17 wolves in the past year alone, all executed for minor infractions. All happened to be either of mixed blood or supporters of integration between the territories. She unfolded another paper, tax records showing that mixed blood families pay 3 times the tribute of purebloods, despite owning the smallest territories and poorest lands. Health reports showing that half-breed children are denied access to pack healers, leading to a mortality rate 5 times higher than pure blood pups. The crowd stirred uneasily. These were facts everyone knew, but no one spoke aloud. And this, Kaya held up the final document, her hand shaking slightly. A written order with your seal, commanding that any wolf who mates with a human be sterilized to prevent further contamination of pack bloodlines. Dated 3 days ago. Theron's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. You dare question my methods of maintaining pack purity? I question whether fear and hatred make a pack strong, or whether they rot it from within. Kaya shot back, surprising herself with her boldness. The right of fangs exists precisely for moments like this, when those without power must stand against those who wield it unjustly. Elder Moravin, the pack's oldest wolf and keeper of laws, stepped forward reluctantly. His ancient voice cracked as he spoke. The half-breed speaks truly, my king. The right, once invoked with legitimate grievance, cannot be denied. It is moon-sworn law, older than the crown itself. Theron turned his frigid gaze on the elder, who immediately dropped to one knee, but continued. You must choose 3 champions. If she survives all 3 trials, then the final judgment belongs to the moon goddess alone, to be delivered through sacred combat between challenger and king. And if she dies? Theron asked coldly. Then her challenge dies with her, and her name is struck from all pack records, as if she never existed. The preparation chamber was little more than a cave carved into the mountain, cold and damp, with barely enough space to stand upright. They had given Kaya 3 hours to prepare for the trials, a mockery. Really, considering most wolves train their entire lives for such combat. She sat on the stone floor, trying to stop her hands from shaking. What had she done? In her desperation to avoid execution, she had invoked something far worse. At least beheading would have been quick. The trials would be designed to make her suffer, to prove that half-breeds were inferior, that challenging the natural order led only to agony. The iron door scraped open, and she expected guards coming to drag her to her doom. Instead, a figure in a hooded cloak slipped inside, moving with the fluid grace of a trained assassin. You're either very brave or very stupid, a female voice said from beneath the hood. The figure pushed back the covering, revealing a striking woman with silver-streaked auburn hair and calculating green eyes. I'm Lyra Nightwhisper, keeper of the old histories. And you, little half-breed, have just done something I've been waiting 3 years for someone to do. Kaya tensed. If you're here to kill me, before the trials, kill you? Lyra laughed bitterly. Why would I kill the first person brave enough to challenge Theron's rule? No, I'm here to give you something that might help you survive long enough to expose what he really is. She pulled out a small vial filled with silvery liquid that seemed to move on its own, with moonblood essence distilled from the sacred springs beneath the mountain, where the first wolves were blessed by the goddess herself. 3 drops on your tongue before each trial. It won't make you stronger, but it will let your mixed blood work for you instead of against you. Why would you help me? Kaya asked suspiciously. Lyra's eyes darkened. Because I knew Theron before he became king. I was there the night everything changed. The wolf, who sits on that throne, carries a terrible secret. He won the crown through combat. Yes, but at a price that would destroy everything if the pack knew. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. The magic he used to win, to appear as the perfect pure-blood alpha. It came from a curse, one that twists him into something else entirely when no one's watching. Before Kaya could respond, Lyra pressed the vial into her hand. The first champion will be Magnus Ironjaw, the executioner. He's strong but slow, and he has an old injury on his right shoulder from a battle years ago. Use your sight, your gift, to see pack bonds. In combat, it will show you more than just connections. It will show you weaknesses, patterns, the flow of power through their bodies. How do you know about my sight? Kaya breathed. Beta Commander Wraith wasn't the first to discover your ability. I've been watching you for months, hoping for this moment. There's an old prophecy. Footsteps echoed outside. Lyra quickly pulled her hood back up. Trust your mixed blood. It's not your weakness. It's what makes you unpredictable. Pure wolves fight with instinct. Humans fight with strategy. You can do both. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. In the third trial, no matter what form it takes, remember this. Theron's greatest fear isn't losing his throne. It's others discovering what he truly is beneath the mask of perfection. Use that. The door closed behind her, leaving Kaya alone with more questions than answers. She looked down at the vial in her hand, its contents swirling like captured moonlight. Outside, she could hear the crowd gathering, hungry for blood sport. 3 drops of silvery liquid on her tongue. It tasted like winter starlight, an ancient magic, burning and soothing at once. As it spread through her body, she felt something shift not physically, but in her perception. The cave walls suddenly showed faint threads of energy, the lingering traces of every wolf who had been held here before. The arena was a natural amphitheater carved by time and wind into the mountain's face, its floors stained dark with the blood of centuries of challenges. Thousands of wolves filled the stone seats, their excitement buzzing through the air like electricity. At the highest point, Alpha King Theron sat motionless on his throne, his expression unreadable as Arctic stone. Kaya entered through the Challenger's Gate, wearing nothing but simple fighting leathers, no armor, no weapons. Half-breeds weren't permitted such luxuries. The crowd's roar was deafening, a mixture of bloodlust and mockery. Behold, Elder Moravin's voice rang out, magically amplified. The right of fangs has been invoked. The challenger must face 3 trials, chosen by our Alpha King. Should she survive all 3, she earns the right to face the king himself in sacred combat, where the moon goddess will reveal her judgment. Theron stood slowly, his presence immediately silencing the crowd. For the first trial, his voice carried across the arena. I choose combat against Magnus Ironjaw, my executioner. The half-breed, who claims our justice is flawed, will face the very instrument of that justice. The gates opposite Kaya groaned open. And Magnus emerged a mountain of a wolf man, partially shifted into his war form. He stood 8 feet tall, his body covered in iron-gray fur, muscles rippling beneath. His massive clawed hands could tear through stone. This was the form only the strongest wolves could maintain, a perfect fusion of human intelligence and wolf power. But as the moonblood essence flowed through Kaya's veins, she saw more. Silvery threads of energy ran through Magnus's body like a map, showing the flow of his power. And there, in his right shoulder, just as Lyra had said, a dark knot where the energy stuttered and pooled, an old wound that had never properly healed. Magnus charged without ceremony, moving faster than something his size should. Kaya barely dove aside in time, his claws raking the air where she'd stood. The crowd roared approval at the near miss. She tried to shift, to at least partially transform like Magnus had, but her mixed blood betrayed her as always. Her muscles seized, caught between forms. Her bones began to change, then snapped back, sending agony through her limbs. She was trapped in her human shape, while facing a war-form wolf. Magnus laughed, a sound like grinding stone. This is the challenger? This pathetic half-thing that can't even shift? I'll make this quick, out of pity. He lunged again, but this time, Kaya was watching the energy flow through his body. She could see the attack before his muscles moved, see how his weight shifted, how the power gathered in his legs. She rolled left, then immediately changed direction, as she saw his energy redirect to follow her. Her hand found a sharp stone on the arena floor. As Magnus overextended, she drove it hard into the dark knot of energy in his shoulder. The reaction was instantaneous. His right arm spasmed, his war form flickering. He roared in pain and rage. "You little..." He swung with his left arm, catching Kaya across the ribs and sending her flying. She hit the arena wall hard, tasting blood. The crowd screamed for her death. But as she struggled to her feet, she noticed something strange. Where her blood had splattered the ground, tiny silver flowers were sprouting moonsbane, the sacred flower that only grew in places touched by divine magic. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Magnus hesitated, his eyes widening at the impossible sight. That moment of distraction was all Kaya needed. She pushed off the wall, using moves her human mother had taught her, not wolf combat, but the flowing martial arts of the Eastern human kingdoms. Her movements were unpredictable, without the patterns ingrained in wolf fighters. She struck his wounded shoulder again and again, each hit guided by her ability to see his energy flows. Magnus's war form began to fail, his body unable to maintain the transformation with the disrupted energy flow. As he shrank back toward human form, Kaya grabbed his own executioner's blade from his belt, the one he'd planned to use on her that morning, and held it to his throat. "Yield," she panted, blood running from her mouth. Magnus's eyes blazed with humiliation, but with his wolf form broken and a blade at his throat, he had no choice. "I yield." They gave her 1 hour between trials, enough time to bind her broken ribs, but not enough for them to heal. Even with her accelerated wolf healing working at half speed, Kaya sat in a small antechamber, trying to process what had happened. She had survived the first trial, but more importantly, those silver flowers. "Moonsbane hasn't bloomed in these lands for 50 years. A deep voice said from the doorway. She looked up to find Alpha King Theron himself, standing there, having entered so silently she hadn't noticed. This close, without the crowd and ceremony, he seemed different. His winter storm eyes held a complexity she hadn't seen from the thrown layers of emotion buried beneath Arctic control. "Your Majesty," she said, struggling to stand despite her injuries. "Stay seated," he commanded. But his tone was curious rather than cruel. He entered the chamber fully, and she noticed how he moved with the same careful control she recognized in herself, someone hiding their true nature. "Tell me, half-breed, do you know what Moonsbane represents?" The sacred texts say it marks places where the moon goddess has taken notice. Kaya replied carefully. "Notice," he repeated, a bitter smile touching his lips. Such a gentle word for divine judgment. He moved closer, and she caught his scent, wolf and pine, and something else, something that reminded her of moonlight on water, but underneath it, something wrong, like two scents fighting for dominance. "Your mother was from the Jade Republic, wasn't she? One of their warrior monks?" Kaya's eyes widened. No one here knew that. Her mother had been careful to hide her origins, knowing it would make Kaya's status even worse. The warrior monks were legendary fighters, but also practitioners of arts that mixed human discipline with wolf instinct. "How did you—" "I know many things others assume I don't," Theron interrupted. "For instance, I know you can see pack bonds. I know your mother trained you in the flowing river style of combat. And I know that Beta Commander Wraith didn't just try to make you spy on me. He discovered something about you that terrified him. Something that made him try to kill you, not recruit you." Kaya's heart raced. "I don't know what you mean, don't you?" He knelt suddenly, bringing himself to her eye level, and for a moment his controlled mask slipped. "When you see the pack bonds, what do you see when you look at me?" She hesitated, then answered honestly, "Nothing. You have no bonds. It's like you exist outside the pack structure entirely. Neither alpha nor omega, neither leader nor follower. You're alone." Something flashed in his eyes, pain, perhaps, or recognition. "And what does that tell you?" "That you're not what you appear to be," she said slowly. "That whatever you are, you're as much an outsider as I am." He stood abruptly, his mask sliding back into place. "The second trial begins in 40 minutes. I've chosen something special for you." He moved toward the door, then paused. "A word of advice, half-breed. The physical trials are nothing compared to what comes next. My second champion doesn't fight with claws or strength. She fights with truth. And truth, I've found, cuts deeper than any blade." After he left, Kaya sat in stunned silence. Why had he come? To intimidate her? To warn her? Or was it possible he wanted her to succeed? She took 3 more drops of the moonblood essence, feeling it spread through her veins like liquid starlight. This time, the change was more pronounced. The energy threads around her became clearer. But more than that, she began to see echoes of the past layered over the present. The chamber was filled with ghostly impressions of every wolf who had waited here before her. But one echo was stronger than the others, more recent. A figure standing where Theron had just been, but younger, desperate. The echo figure's appearance flickered sometimes, showing Theron's perfect alpha features, sometimes showing something else. Someone caught between forms, just like her. "Please," the echo whispered to someone she couldn't see. "The curse will make me appear as pure blood, but the price is that I'll lose myself. I'll become the very thing I'm trying to change." The echo faded, leaving Kaya reeling. A curse to appear pure blood? But that would mean the second trial. took place in the Hall of Mirrors, a sacred space within the mountain, where wolves traditionally faced their inner nature during coming of age ceremonies. The walls were lined with polished obsidian that reflected not just images, but truths that the viewer might prefer hidden. Kaya entered to find a woman waiting for her, elderly but elegant, with snow-white hair and eyes like polished amber. She wore the robes of a truth-seer, one of the rare wolves gifted with the ability to pull memories and secrets from others' minds. "I am Valdris the Truth Keeper," the woman announced to the assembled crowd, who watched from behind protective barriers. "The second trial is not of the body, but of the spirit. The challenger will face her deepest truths, and we shall all witness whether she has the strength to survive them." Before Kaya could prepare herself, Valdris raised her hands, and the world exploded into memory. Suddenly, she was 7 years old again, watching her father argue with the pack council. "She's an abomination," he roared. "I should have drowned her at birth. No daughter of mine will carry tainted blood." The memory shifted. She was 13, desperately trying to shift for the 100th time while other young wolves laughed. Blood ran from her nose as she pushed her body beyond its limits, bones cracking, but never completing the change. Half-breed, can't even shift," they sang. "Not wolf, not human, just a waste of gift." Another shift. 17 years old, the night her mother died. Not from illness as everyone believed, but from the poison Beta Commander Wraith had slipped into her tea when she'd refused to teach him the warrior monk techniques. Kaya had watched from the shadows, too terrified to intervene, too weak to save her only protector. "No," present Kaya gasped, reliving the shame and guilt. But Valdris wasn't finished. The memories grew darker, more personal. Every moment of weakness, every time she'd wished she could be pure-blooded, every secret thought of ending her own life rather than living between worlds. The crowd watched it all, her pain projected in the mirrors for their entertainment. Then came a memory she didn't recognize, couldn't recognize, because she'd been too young. She was an infant, perhaps days old, and her mother was running through a forest, clutching her tight. Behind them, wolves howled in pursuit. "Please," her mother gasped in accented words to someone ahead. "Take her, protect her. She's not just mixed blood, she carries the bridge blessing. She's the one prophesied." An arrow of silver pierced her mother's shoulder. She stumbled, fell, but managed to push baby Kaya into a hollow tree. "Live," she whispered. "Live and remember you are not broken. You are the healing between worlds." The memory shattered. But Valdris had one more truth to reveal. With a gesture, she pulled forth not Kaya's memory, but one that had been hidden in the very stones of the hall. It was Theron, 3 years ago, before he was king. He stood in this very hall, but his appearance was different, constantly shifting between wolf and human features, unable to hold either form properly. A half-breed, just like her. "I challenge for the throne." Young, Theron declared to the previous Alpha King, his own grandfather. "By right of blood." The old king laughed cruelly. "You? You're nobody. Worse than nobody, you're mixed blood pretending to be pure. Did you think I wouldn't recognize my own grandson? The child of my daughter's shameful liaison with a human mage? Then you know I have claim to challenge," Theron replied steadily. "You have nothing," the old king snarled. "But I'll grant your challenge, if only to show everyone what happens to half-breeds who forget their place." The memory jumped forward. The old king lay defeated, and Theron stood over him, but something was changing. A woman in a cloak, not Lyra, someone older, stood beside him, chanting in an ancient tongue. "The curse will make you appear as the perfect pure-blood alpha," she said. You'll have the power to change things from within, but the price, you'll slowly become what you pretend to be. Unless you find another who can see past both masks to the truth beneath, you'll lose yourself entirely to the lie. I accept, young, Theron said desperately. If it means I can save other half-breeds from what I've suffered, the road to salvation is paved with good intentions. The witch warned. Remember, only truth, freely given, can break truth magically hidden. The Hall of Mirrors erupted in chaos. Wolves shouted in confusion and rage, some calling for both Kaya and Theron to be executed for their deception, others demanding answers. But Kaya could only stare at Theron where he sat frozen on his throne, his perfect mask finally shattered. Their eyes met across the distance, two half-breeds, two liars, two broken souls, trying to survive in a world that demanded purity they couldn't provide. In that moment, she understood everything. His harsh laws against half-breeds had been an act, a desperate attempt to gain the pure blood's trust, while secretly protecting as many mixed bloods as he could. But the curse had been twisting him, making the act become reality. Silence! Elder Moravan's voice boomed. The trial is not yet complete. Truth, Keeper Valdris, does the challenger pass? Valdris looked between Kaya and Theron, something like sorrow in her ancient eyes. She faced her truths without breaking. She passes. Then we proceed to the third trial. Moravan announced, though he too seemed shaken. Your Majesty, name your final champion. Theron stood slowly, his composure hanging by threads. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. I name myself. Gasps rippled through the crowd. This was unprecedented, the king participating in his own champion trials. That's not permitted, someone shouted. The law states, if the law states, I may choose any champion. Theron cut them off. I choose myself. Unless the half-breed wishes to withdraw her challenge, all eyes turned to Kaya. She could withdraw now, claim the trials had proven her point. But she thought of those silver flowers blooming from her blood, of her mother's words about being a bridge, of Theron standing alone with no pack bonds, wearing a curse that was slowly destroying him. I accept, she said quietly. The third trial would take place at sunset. As Kaya was led back to prepare, she caught a glimpse of Lyra Nightwhisper in the crowd, the woman's green eyes bright with something like hope. In her preparation chamber, Kaya took the last of the moonblood essence. This time, the change was profound. She could see not just energy threads, but the very fabric of reality, how magic and nature intertwined, how the curse on Theron twisted through him like poisoned vines, how her own mixed blood created patterns that shouldn't exist but did. A presence behind her made her turn. Theron stood in the doorway, having again entered silently. But this time, with her enhanced sight, she could see both of him, the perfect alpha king on the surface, and underneath, the frightened half-breed boy, features shifting constantly between wolf and human. Why? She asked. Why maintain the lie? Why execute real half-breeds when you're— Because the curse demanded it, he said bitterly. I thought I could change things slowly, from within, save most while sacrificing a few, but the curse, it feeds on deception. The more I pretend to be pure, the more it demands I act like the worst of them. Every half-breed I couldn't save, every harsh law I had to pass, to maintain my cover, it all feeds the curse, makes it stronger. He stepped closer, and she could see the curse mark burning beneath his shirt, spreading like a disease. In an hour, we fight, and one of us will die. But before that happens, I need you to know those executions you documented. I tried to fake most of them. The half-breeds I executed are living in hidden settlements at the borders. But some, Some I couldn't save. The curse demanded real blood sometimes. And his voice broke. I chose the lesser evil, saved 10 by sacrificing one. My mother. Your mother discovered what I was, Theron said quietly. Wraith found out and tried to blackmail us both. She died protecting my secret, believing I could save more lives living as a false king than dying as a true half-breed. I've carried that guilt for 6 years. Kaya felt tears on her cheeks. She knew, and still. She believed in the bridge, Theron said. The old prophecy that speaks of 2 half-breeds who would unite the worlds. I thought I could be that bridge alone, through deception. But I was wrong. The bridge requires truth, not lies. Then let's give them truth, Kaya said suddenly. In the arena, instead of fighting each other, the curse won't let me, Theron interrupted. Once combat begins, it will take over. I'll try to kill you with everything I have. That's why I chose myself as champion. Better you kill me and end this lie than another death on my conscience. The sun hung low on the horizon as Kaya entered the arena for the 3rd trial. The crowd was different now, divided, confused, angry. Some wolves had left in disgust at the revelations. Others remained, desperate to understand. And scattered throughout were faces she had never noticed before, other half-breeds who had been hiding their nature, now watching with fearful hope. Theron stood in the arena's center. But something was wrong. Dark veins spread from his curse mark, visible through his shirt. His hands trembled with suppressed violence. The curse was taking over, demanding blood for the deception being revealed. The 3rd trial is combat until submission or death. Elder Moravin announced reluctantly, "May the moon goddess have mercy on us all." Theron's transformation was violent and wrong. Not the smooth shift of a normal wolf, but a tortured twisting as the curse fought his mixed blood. What emerged was neither wolf nor man, but something trapped agonizingly between massive and distorted, with too many joints, patches of fur and scales, eyes that burned with unnatural fire. The crowd recoiled in horror. This was their king's true form, not the perfect alpha they'd followed, but a cursed creature being destroyed by his own deception. "Kill me." Theron's voice emerged, distorted from the monstrous form. "End this. Free them from what I'm becoming." Kaya circled him slowly, her mother's training taking over. She could see the curse's pattern now, how it fed on his self-hatred, how every moment he wished to be something other than mixed blood gave it more power. He lunged with inhuman speed, and she barely dodged. His claws raked the ground where she'd stood, leaving deep gouges in solid stone. But she noticed something deep inside. The real Theron was fighting the curse, trying to pull back even as it forced him to attack. "Stop holding back," she shouted, dodging another strike. "You think dying is the answer? You think that will save our people? There is no other way," he roared, his monstrous form bearing down on her. "The curse can only break if I embrace being pure blood completely and let it consume me. Or," he stopped mid-strike. "Or?" Kaya pressed, dancing away from his claws. "Or if someone accepts me as I truly am," he finished, his voice hollow. But who could accept this monster? Kaya thought of the silver flowers that bloomed from her blood, of her mother dying to protect his secret, of all the half-breeds living in shadows. And she made a choice that changed everything. Instead of fighting, she knelt in the center of the arena, placing her neck bare in the ultimate sign of submission, but not to the Alpha Kings. To the half-breed beneath, "I accept you," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent arena. Not as the Alpha King, Not as the pure blood you pretend to be, but as Theron the half-breed, who sacrificed his very identity, trying to save others like us. The cursed creature froze, trembling. I challenge you under the right of fangs, not as a subject challenging her king, Kaya continued, but as one half-breed calling another to stop hiding, to stop pretending, to stop letting fear of what we are destroy what we could become. Dark magic swirled around Theron's monstrous form, the curse fighting to maintain its hold, but for the first time, she could see another pattern beneath it, silver threads like moonlight, his true nature fighting to break free. You don't understand. Theron's voice was agonized. If I let go of the lie, if I stop being the Alpha King, the other territories will invade. The pure-blood supremacists will slaughter every half-breed they can find. Everything I've built will finally have truth as its foundation instead of lies, Kaya interrupted. She stood slowly, approaching his monstrous form without fear. You've been protecting half-breeds from the shadows, building settlements in secret, saving who you could while pretending to persecute us. But shadows aren't where we belong. She reached out, placing her hand on his distorted chest, right over the curse mark. It burned her palm, but she didn't pull away. Through the connection, she could feel his pain, 3 years of self-hatred, of becoming what he despised, of watching the curse slowly consume his humanity. What if instead of a pure-blood king pretending to hate mixed bloods, or a half-breed pretending to be pure, you were just yourself? What if we both were? The curse mark pulsed beneath Kaya's burned palm, fighting her touch. Around them, the arena had become a battlefield of divided loyalties. Some of the royal guard had moved to protect their king. Others stood frozen in indecision. The crowd was splitting pure-blood supremacists, calling for both half-breeds to be killed. While others watched with desperate hope, Theron gasped through his monstrous form. You think acceptance is enough? You think truth alone can hold a kingdom together? Before Kaya could respond, a horn sounded from the mountain peaks, and invasion warning riders appeared at the arena's edge, bearing the banners of the southern territories. Alpha King Raxon sends his regards, the lead rider called out. We heard your king has been revealed as a half-breed abomination. The Southern Pack claims this territory by right of pure blood. Chaos erupted. Some of Theron's wolves immediately moved to defensive positions, but others hesitated, torn between loyalty and prejudice. The curse reacted to Theron's spike of fear and rage, his monstrous form growing larger, more distorted. You see? He roared at Kaya. This is what truth brings: war, death, the destruction of everything. But Kaya was watching something else. Among the crowd, figures were standing up, throwing off cloaks and revealing themselves half-breeds, dozens of them, then hundreds. They'd been living among the pure bloods all along, hiding their nature. Some were merchants, others soldiers, healers, teachers, even minor officials. The pack was far more mixed than anyone had realized. Lyra Nightwhisper appeared beside Elder Moravin, throwing back her hood. I call for the joining, she shouted, her voice magically amplified. The joining, a ritual so old it was almost myth. When a pack faced external threat, any wolf could call for unity, and all internal challenges were suspended until the threat was resolved. The joining requires a unanimous pack, one of the supremacists shouted. We don't recognize half-breeds as pack. Then you don't recognize your king, Lyra shot back. Or half your healers, your weaponsmiths, your border guards. Look around you. The pack you thought was pure has been mixed all along. We've been hiding, yes, but we've also been serving, protecting, building alongside you. The southern wolves were advancing now, But something unexpected happened. A young pure-blood warrior named Eric stepped forward, placing himself between the invaders and the arena. "I stand with my king," he declared loudly. "Not because he's pure, blood he's not, but because, for 3 years, he's kept us safe, fed, protected. I don't care what blood he carries. I care that he carries us." Others began stepping forward, first a trickle, then a flood. Pure bloods and revealed half-breeds standing together, forming a defensive line. The curse writhed around Theron, feeding on his disbelief. "There? Defending me?" "No," Kaya said softly, her hand still pressed against his curse mark despite the burning pain. "They're defending us. All of us. The pack. They thought they knew never existed. It was always mixed, always both. You tried to protect that through deception. But maybe it's strong enough to survive truth." Where Kaya's blood had dripped from her burned hand onto Theron's curse mark, those silver moonsbane flowers began blooming again, but not just a few. They spread like wildfire across the arena floor, up the walls, creating a barrier of sacred blossoms between the pack and the invaders. The southern wolves tried to push through, but recoiled. The flowers burned them, rejecting their presence. Only those who had accepted the truth could pass through unharmed. "Impossible," the southern leader snarled. "Moonsbane only blooms for those chosen by the moon goddess," Elder Moravin finished, his ancient voice filled with wonder. The prophecy. When the divided become whole, when the broken become bridges, the moon herself will mark her chosen pack. The silver moonsbane flowers pulsed with ethereal light, and suddenly Valdris the Truthkeeper gasped, her eyes rolling back as a vision seized her. When she spoke, her voice carried the otherworldly resonance of prophecy. "The curse was never a curse," she intoned, her words reaching every ear in the arena. "It was a test. The moon goddess herself designed it, waiting for the two who could break it, not through pure blood or perfect forms, but through accepting the beauty of being between." Theron's monstrous form shuddered. "What are you talking about?" Valdris's unseeing eyes fixed on him. "The witch who cursed you, she was your grandmother. The human mage the old king loved and abandoned. She didn't die as he claimed. She survived, learned the old magic, and waited. When you came to challenge, she saw in you the potential to be a bridge. But first, you had to understand both sides, the privilege of appearing pure and the pain of being mixed." The Truthkeeper's voice grew stronger. "The curse would only break when you found another who could see past both forms to the truth beneath. When two half-breeds stood together, not hiding, not pretending, but proud of being the bridge between worlds." Kaya felt the pattern finally clicking into place. "That's why my mother called me a bridge. That's why the Moonblood essence worked on me. We're not accidents or abominations, we're evolution. Wolves bring strength and instinct. Humans bring adaptability and reason. Apart, both are limited. Together, we're what the moon goddess intended all along." Theron finished, understanding, flooding his distorted features. The pure lines were never meant to stay separate. They were meant to merge, to create something stronger. The southern alpha snarled. "Blasphemy! The moon goddess favors the pure." "Then explain this." Kaya challenged, gesturing to the barrier of sacred flowers. "If the goddess favors only pure bloods, why does her most sacred sign protect a pack that embraces mixing?" The real transformation began when Theron started to laugh, not bitter or mocking, but genuinely, freely, for the first time since he'd taken the throne. "All this time," he gasped, "I've been torturing myself to hide what I am, when what I am was the point all along. The curse mark under Kaya's palm began to change. The dark veins of deception transformed into silver lines of truth, spreading across Theron's distorted form. But instead of forcing him back to a false pure appearance, something unprecedented happened. His form stabilized into something new, neither the monstrous distortion nor the false pure blood appearance, but a perfect fusion. He stood 7 feet tall, with features that flowed seamlessly between wolf and human, covered in fur that looked like spun moonlight, with eyes that held both wild instinct and sharp intelligence. He was beautiful, not despite his mixed nature, but because of it. The southern wolves stepped back in shock. Their leader raised his sword. Attack! Destroy these abominations! But his own wolves hesitated. Among them, Kaya could now see the telltale signs. Some of them were half-breeds too, hiding just as Theron had hidden. How many of you are tired of hiding? Kaya called out to them. How many of you have children, parents, lovers who carry mixed blood? How many of you are exhausted from pretending to hate what you secretly are? A young southern warrior suddenly threw down his weapon. I'm done, he announced, pulling off his helmet to reveal features that clearly showed human heritage. My mother was human. I've been hiding it my whole life. If the North accepts half-breeds, then I stand with the North. The defection triggered an avalanche. One by one, hidden half-breeds in the southern force revealed themselves, crossing through the Moonsbane barrier to stand with Theron's pack. The Southern Alpha stood virtually alone, his pure-blood supremacist followers reduced to a handful. This is madness. You're destroying centuries of tradition. No, Theron said, his new voice carrying both growl and speech perfectly. We're finally fulfilling what tradition was supposed to protect: the pack. The whole pack, not just the parts that look alike. Elder Moravin stepped forward, his ancient hands trembling as he lifted them toward the sky. The challenge is concluded. The moon goddess has shown her will through the sacred Moonsbane. Kaya Thornweaver has proven the injustice of divided law. He turned to Theron, but a king who has ruled through deception cannot continue to lead alone. You're right, Theron said quietly. I've ruled through lies, even if my intentions were to protect. I've made decisions in shadow that should have been made in light. I'm not fit to lead alone. He turned to Kaya, and in his transformed eyes she saw not the cold Alpha King or the cursed monster, but the frightened half-breed who had done terrible things trying to save his people. You invoked the right of fangs. You challenged my rule by ancient law. Having survived the 3 trials, you have the right to claim the throne. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kaya stood frozen, her burned hand still tingling from where she'd touched his curse mark. I don't want your throne. Then what do you want? Theron asked, and she realized he was genuinely asking not as a king to a subject, but as one broken soul to another. Kaya looked around the arena, at the pure bloods, learning to see their half-breed neighbors, at the hidden mixed bloods, finally breathing freely, at the Moonsbane flowers that had protected them all. I want what my mother died believing in, a bridge between worlds. She stepped forward, addressing the entire assembly. For too long, we've believed that power must be held by one pure bloodline, one true form, one right way. But look at us. We're already mixed, already diverse, already more than the simple categories we've forced ourselves into. Lyra Nightwhisper emerged from the crowd, carrying something wrapped in ancient cloth. There is precedent, she announced, unwrapping what she held 2 crowns, not one. In the oldest laws, before the pure blood supremacy took hold, packs could be led by an alpha pair, not mates, but equals who balanced each other. The practice was abolished when the pure blood doctrine took hold. But the law was never formally removed. Co-rulers? A wolf called out. That hasn't been done for 5 centuries. Lots of things have been forbidden. Lyra replied sharply. Mixed blood children were forbidden, yet here they stand, protecting you. Truth was forbidden, yet it has set us free. Perhaps it's time to question what we've forbidden and why. Theron looked at Kaya, hope and uncertainty warring in his transformed features. Would you? Could you stand to rule beside me after everything I've done? The lives I couldn't save? Kaya thought of all the pain, her mother's death, her father's rejection, the years of being called broken. But she also thought of Theron's secret settlements for half-breeds, his desperate attempts to protect them even while pretending to persecute them, the curse he'd borne, trying to change things from within. I could, she said slowly, but not as we were. You can't be the king who hides his nature, and I can't be the half-breed who accepts being less than. If we do this, we do it as equals in power, in decision-making, in truth. The pack must vote, Elder Moravin interjected. This would change everything, our laws, our structure, our very identity as a territory. Then let them vote, Theron said, his voice steady. He addressed the crowd. I've failed you by hiding the truth. But I've also protected you from wars, from starvation, from the collapse that comes when packs tear themselves apart over blood purity. Judge me for both. Kaya added, We're not asking you to abandon all tradition, but to return to the oldest tradition of all survival through unity. The southern territories stand at our borders. Others will follow. We can face them divided, pure against mixed, or we can face them whole. The vote was called. Every wolf now revealed as pure or mixed would have equal say. As they cast their votes, the moonsbane flowers began to sing an ethereal harmony that seemed to come from the earth itself. When the count was finished, Elder Moravin's hands shook as he announced, by a margin of 3 votes, the pack accepts the alpha pair. 3 votes, the narrowest possible victory. It would be enough to start, but trust would have to be earned. As Lyra placed the twin crowns upon their heads, Kaya felt the weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. But also something else, hope. For the first time in her life, she stood as an equal, not despite her mixed blood, but because of it. 6 months later, the transformation of the Ironwood territory had not been without pain. 3 other territories had declared them blasphemous, threatening war. 2 had sent assassins. 1 had attempted economic isolation. That something unexpected had happened with each threat. The pack had grown stronger, not weaker. Kaya stood on the highest tower of the castle, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, the same view she'd had that first morning as a condemned prisoner. But everything had changed. The execution platform had been dismantled. Its stones used to build a new healing center that served both pure and mixed bloods. The arena, where she'd fought for her life, was now a training ground, where wolves and humans learned each other's fighting technique. The Eastern delegation has arrived, Theron said, joining her on the balcony. He moved differently now, no longer hiding his fluid grace that came from being perfectly balanced between forms. In daylight, his mixed heritage was visible and proud. There, nervous, Kaya smiled. They should be. They're about to negotiate with the only territory that's grown stronger since the revelation. The revelation. That's what history would call it. The day the truth about half-breeds came out. The day everything changed. Their prince is mixed blood. Theron added quietly. Hidden, of course, but I can sense it now. That was one gift of their transformation. They could recognize other half-breeds, no matter how well they hid. It was an ability that had proven invaluable in the quiet revolution, spreading through the territories. Should we tell him? Kaya asked. Let him see first. Let him understand that hiding isn't the only option. A young wolf bounded up the stairs. Tam, one of the first openly mixed-blood children to join their new integrated training program. Alpha Kaya, Alpha Theron. Elder Moravin says to tell you that it's happening again. They rushed to the courtyard where a crowd had gathered. In the center, the young half-breed girl, one who'd been told her whole life she was worthless, stood surrounded by silver moonsbane flowers that had sprouted from drops of her blood during training. That's the 5th one this month, Lyra observed, appearing beside them. The blessing is spreading. The moon goddess isn't just accepting half-breeds, she's marking them as sacred. Kaya knelt beside the frightened girl, remembering her own first manifestation. It's all right, she said gently. You're not broken. You're blessed. The flowers are showing everyone what we've always been, bridges between worlds. Later, in the Great Hall, the Eastern delegation sat stiffly as they presented their terms. Prince Hadrian, young and trying to project pure-blood authority, spoke for them. The Eastern Territory offers a treaty. We will not attack if you contain your philosophy within your borders. Counteroffer. Theron said calmly. We'll sign a treaty of mutual defense and open trade. Any wolf, pure or mixed, who seeks sanctuary in our territory will be granted it, and will continue to speak the truth to anyone who asks. That's not containment, Prince Hadrian protested. That's expansion of your heresy. It's not heresy, Kaya interjected. It's evolution. How many half-breeds hide in your territory, Your Highness? How many of your people are exhausted from pretending? Prince Hadrian's jaw clenched. She could see it in his eyes, the careful control, the practiced pure-blood mannerisms that didn't quite fit. He was one of them, hiding in plain sight. You don't know what you're asking, he said quietly. We lived through it, Theron said. Yes, there was chaos. Yes, we lost some people who couldn't accept change. But look at us now. We're stronger, more unified, more innovative than we've ever been. That night, Prince Hadrian came to them in secret. How? He asked simply, his careful mask cracking. How do you bear everyone knowing? The same way you bear hiding, Kaya answered. One day at a time, but with one difference. We no longer carry the weight of lies. By morning, Prince Hadrian had made his choice. In front of both delegations, he partially shifted, revealing his mixed heritage. His own delegation recoiled, but he stood firm. The Ironwood territory has proven something I was too cowardly to test, he announced. That strength doesn't come from purity, but from unity. The Eastern Territory will sign the treaty, all of it. The epilogue. 1 year later, the Great Gathering Hall had been rebuilt to accommodate a new tradition, the Unity Festival, celebrating both wolf and human customs. Kaya stood before the assembled crowd, now swelled with refugees and pilgrims from all 5 territories. They say, the most dangerous wolf is one with nothing left to lose, she began, echoing her thoughts from that first day. But I've learned something different. The most powerful wolf is one with nothing left to hide. Beside her, Theron added, a year ago, I wore a curse that forced me to hide my mixed blood. Today, I wear that same mixed blood as a crown, because I learned that our greatest weaknesses can become our greatest strengths when we stop being ashamed of them. In the crowd, she spotted familiar faces. Magnus, her former would-be executioner, now teaching integrated combat. Valdris, using her Truth Keeper abilities to help other half-breeds confront their hidden natures. Even some former pureblood supremacists, slowly learning that their world hadn't ended when the walls came down. But most importantly, She saw children mixed and pure alike, playing together, learning together, growing up in a world where they wouldn't have to hide or pretend or choose between parts of themselves. The Right of Fangs. Elder Moravin announced, his ancient voice carrying new strength, will be remembered not as the challenge of a condemned half-breed against an unjust king, but as the moment two broken souls chose to break the world's brokenness instead of each other. As the celebration continued around them, Theron turned to Kaya. "Any regrets about challenging me that day?" "Only one," she said, then smiled at his concerned look. "I wish I'd done it sooner." The moonsbane flowers, that had become the symbol of their territory, bloomed throughout the hall, silver and eternal, bridging earth and sky, wolf and human, past and future. They were no longer rare or miraculous. They were becoming what change always becomes when it's finally accepted normal. The transformation was complete, but the journey had just begun. Other territories were watching, other half-breeds were hoping, other truths were waiting to be revealed. And somewhere in the crowd, a young, half-breed child told all her life she was worthless, watched her alpha pair both mixed, both powerful, both proud, and for the first time believed she could be something more than what the world said she was. The curse had become a blessing, the broken had become whole, and the lie of purity had given way to the truth of diversity. In the end, the most sacred trial wasn't the one Kaya had survived in the arena. It was the one they all faced every day, the challenge to see each other truly, to accept completely, and to build a world where no one had to hide their whole self to be loved.